It was the coffee that tipped me off something was wrong. Not the taste, bitter as usual, but the temperature. It was too warm for how long it had been sitting there, untouched. I had brewed it around 6:45 a.m. I know that because I checked the clock when I hit the brew button, like I always do. I have this habit, clock, switch, stretch. I don't even think about it. And yet when I took my first sip that morning, the mug was still steaming like it had just been poured. The clock on the stove read 9:12 a.m. I hadn't left the apartment. I hadn't moved from the chair by the window, where I usually start my day scrolling through news feeds and email while traffic moans by below. But there was a gap. A full 2 hours. Gone. Nothing to show for it. No half-read articles, no half-written reply drafts. Just me, blinking at a too-hot mug and a weird pressure behind my eyes. That was Tuesday. By Friday, I was Googling therapists. I didn't want pills. I didn't want a diagnosis. I just wanted to stop slipping. That's what it felt like I was slipping through the cracks in my own schedule, losing time like spare change. I found Dr. Marcel through a coworker. She didn't give much detail, just said he was quiet but precise. She said he wasn't like other therapists, didn't talk down to you, said he listened differently. I didn't ask what that meant. I just took the card, no website, no email, just an office address and a phone number. The office was in an older part of the city, above a tailor shop that was never open and next to a bookstore that seemed to stock only faded, sun-bleached hardcovers from before the internet. The building itself leaned slightly as if bracing for a wind that never came. The door read, Dr. M. Marcel, Psychotherapeutic Consultation. Below it, etched in smaller print, by appointment only. I almost turned around twice on the stairs. I don't know why. Nerves, maybe, but not the usual kind. This felt less like anxiety and more like dread, like stepping onto a floor you suspect won't hold your weight. But I kept going, because I needed something to anchor me. He opened the door himself, no receptionist, no waiting room. Mr. Brenton, he said, as if we already knew each other. I offered my hand. He didn't shake it, just nodded and stepped aside to let me in. The office was dim, not dark, just soft. Indirect light from a fixture that looked older than I was. No window. A single chair across from a brown leather couch. Shelves of books I couldn't read the spines of. A faint smell, mineral maybe, like wet stone or an underground river. Dr. Marcel himself was neutral. That's the best word I can come up with. Tall but not imposing. Middle-aged, maybe older but hard to tell. Skin pale, eyes green. Not vivid, not warm. Just green, like polished glass. He wore a charcoal shirt with no tie. His posture was still, too still. He didn't ask me why I was there. He just waited for me to speak. I sat on the couch. It creaked faintly beneath me. He sat across, one leg over the other, hands loosely clasped, watching, not staring, just present, entirely present. I said, I've been losing time. He nodded, not surprised, not curious, just a soft motion of acknowledgement. How long? He asked. I told him about the coffee, the clock, the heat that didn't match the hour. He didn't write anything down, no clipboard, no laptop, no pen. That should have bothered me, but it didn't. He said, Is it always the mornings? Mostly. And what do you feel before the gap? I had to think about that. There's a kind of tension behind my eyes, like pressure building, then nothing, and then I'm back. Do you hear anything? Hear. Sound, humming, clicking, a tone maybe? That question stopped me cold, because I had heard something. Not music, not a voice, just this faint vibrating note, like someone plucking the same string over and over far underground. I hadn't told anyone that. I looked at him. He didn't smile. He didn't lean in. He just blinked once and waited. I said, Sometimes. It's faint, like it's coming from inside the floor. He nodded again. Good, he said softly. That means we can start. I don't remember leaving the session, and that part's gone too. One moment I was sitting across from him. The next I was standing on the sidewalk with my coat zipped and my phone buzzing in my hand, like I'd just come out of a meeting or a movie or a dream I hadn't finished. The timestamp on the phone said I'd been inside for 86 minutes, but I only remember 20. I didn't speak to anyone on the train home, didn't eat dinner, Just sat in the dark in my apartment, listening to the hum of the building and watching the light under the door dim, then brighten, then dim again. And the strangest thing is, I felt better. Like something old had been loosened or something hidden had taken its first breath. I wasn't going to go back. All weekend I told myself that. No need to explain it to anyone. I hadn't told anyone I was even seeing someone in the first place. Just delete the number, pretend the first session never happened, go back to normal, whatever normal was. But something wouldn't let me. It was like trying to walk away from a mirror you hadn't realized was a window. You want to unsee it, but you can't. Something got in. Something was already there. So I went back. Monday, same time, same strange leaning staircase. Same quiet door with the frosted glass that didn't reflect right. Same office, cool, dim, too still. When I stepped inside, it felt like I'd walked underground without moving downward, like the air itself had weight. Dr. Marcel was already seated. He didn't greet me, just gestured to the couch, like we were mid-conversation and I'd just stepped out for a moment. I sat. This time I noticed something. A shift. The couch creaked more than I remembered. The leather had stretched subtly, like someone heavier than me had sat there recently, and there was an indentation in the cushion, still faintly warm. Before I could speak, he said, "Do you remember anything between now and our last session?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Between then and now," he repeated. "What stands out?" I shrugged. "Not much. Work, emails, grocery store. I watched a documentary about mountain climbing." "What did it make you feel?" I frowned. "Nothing. It was just background noise." "Did anything taste different?" I paused and I realized, yes. Water had tasted metallic for the last 2 days, just faintly, like drinking from an old coin. Marcel saw it in my face. "Good," he said quietly. "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because it means the baseline is shifting." I shook my head. "What baseline?" He leaned forward, elbows on knees. His hands didn't move. His eyes were steady, almost unreadable. "When did you first start to feel misaligned?" "Misaligned?" He let the word hang, and so I thought. And I told him about the stoplight last month. I was walking home late, and I stopped at an intersection I'd crossed 1,000 times before. Same cracked sidewalk, same blinking hand. But I stood there, frozen, because something felt off. Not visually, not logically, just off. The light changed, and I didn't move. The crosswalk sign blinked, and I didn't move. I just stood there, suddenly aware that the entire street felt artificial, too quiet, too balanced, like a set dressed for a scene no one had called action on. I hadn't told anyone that before, and Marcel didn't flinch. "You felt the grid slip," he said. "And what grid?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "When was the last time you woke up from a dream and knew what day it was?" That caught me off guard. I said nothing, because I couldn't remember. I always wake up lost, not confused, just unplaced, like I dropped back into my life without checking where I landed. He sat back. "That's all right," he said. "It's common." "What is?" "The blur." He paused. "And the resistance to asking why it's there." We sat in silence for a while after that. No ticking clock, no ambient music, just the hum. That low, deep note I couldn't identify, like a refrigerator that never cycled off, or the earth itself singing a frequency only bones can hear. At one point I asked him directly, "Are you recording this?" He didn't answer yes or no, just said, "There's no need. You're remembering more than you realize." Something about that chilled me, because he was right. He told me to do something before our next session. Simple instruction. Each morning this week, when you wake up, write down what's missing. Missing? From your home, from your memory, from the space between. I almost laughed, but he didn't, so I nodded. "Fine. One more thing," he added, just as I reached for my coat. "Try to drink water from glass instead of plastic, and no mirrors after dark." I froze. "Why no mirrors?" "Because your face doesn't remember the light yet." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stepped out onto the street feeling like I'd been underground for hours. The sky was brighter than I expected, too bright, almost clinical. As I walked to the subway, I tried to remember the last time I'd seen my reflection at night. I couldn't, but I could feel something watching me through the glass. Not my face, something behind it. The first entry I wrote felt like a lie. Monday. My kitchen table felt wrong. The grain in the wood ran the wrong way. I kept tracing it with my fingers like it would shift back. I stared at that sentence for a long time, wondering if it was real. I mean, the table was still there. 4 legs, scuffed edges, same coffee ring from months ago, but something in me insisted the wood had changed direction, like it had been flipped when I wasn't looking. I wrote more. Tuesday. The neighbor's dog doesn't bark anymore. I stood by the window for 20 minutes waiting for it. Nothing. Not even movement in the yard. Wednesday. There are 11 light switches in my apartment. I've counted them 100 times. Today I found a 12th. It's under the hallway thermostat. No idea what it controls. Each entry felt like it was written in someone else's hand. Not physically, but intentionally. Like I was observing my life through a stranger's lens. Slightly off-center, like someone had made a copy of my apartment and moved in while I was asleep. By the time I sat back down in Dr. Marcel's office, I had a full page of these small fractures. He took the notebook from me gently, didn't comment, didn't read aloud, just turned the pages slowly, nodding every few seconds. Finally, he said, "You're beginning to dislodge." I swallowed. "From what?" "From the enforced pattern," he said. "It means you're resisting the sleep." I stared at him. This still sounds like cult language. "It's not," he said. "It's structural. The way your thoughts loop, the way you reinforce your own stability without realizing it. The brain is a self-censoring machine. And you're what? Uncensoring me?" "Not me," he said. "You." He set the notebook down, slid it back across the table. "Tell me about your dreams." I hesitated. I hadn't written them down, not the way I should have. Something about them resisted transcription, but I remembered enough. I had one where I was not moving, not paralyzed, just still, but I wasn't lying down. I was upright, breathing, but everything around me was black. "Were you alone?" I thought so, but I could hear breathing. Just out of sync with mine, too deep, too dry, like a snake breathing. Marcel nodded slowly. "Any light?" "Number." But I could see. He smiled faintly at that. "You're describing the pre-waking chamber." I blinked. "What?" He steepled his fingers. "Some memories are too old for language, so they come through in dreams. Repetition, shapes, spatial cues. The brain wraps them in metaphor because it doesn't know what else to do." "I wasn't remembering anything," I said. He tilted his head. "You sure?" I didn't respond because part of me was sure, but a quieter part, deep down, had started to wonder. He asked me to close my eyes, and I didn't want to. I told him I felt vulnerable in that room, that I didn't like not knowing if he was watching me. He said, "You're safe here, as long as you're honest." That sentence didn't comfort me, but I closed my eyes anyway. He told me to breathe, count backward from 10, slowly. Visualize the apartment, the hallway, my bedroom, my bed, the pillow, my head resting on it, the moment before sleep. He said, "Now walk backward from that point, step by step. When the light goes out behind your eyes, keep moving. Tell me what you see." I hesitated, then in the dark of my mind, I took that step, and I saw a room, not mine. Stone walls, curved, lit from below with a soft, pulsing blue. Shapes along the edges, glyphs or markings I didn't recognize, symbols I felt rather than read. And in the center, something tall, something watching, but not with eyes, with memory. My eyes snapped open. I was sweating. Marcel was exactly where he had been, hands clasped, still, waiting. I whispered, "That wasn't a memory." He looked at me steadily. "Wasn't it?" After the session, I walked for hours. The streets felt unreal again, not fake, just unfamiliar, like I'd been away longer than I thought. Storefronts had new signage I didn't recognize. A coffee shop I visited weekly had changed its name, color, even the lighting, but no one else seemed to notice. Everything felt too smooth, too aligned. At one point, I passed a bus stop with an ad for some streaming service. The image was sharp, but in the lower corner, just above the disclaimer text, I saw it. A spiral, faint, worked into the design like a watermark, the same spiral I'd drawn in the margins of my notebook without realizing. The same shape I remembered seeing in the room. I didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, but because I was afraid of what I'd remember if I did. I arrived 15 minutes early, and I didn't plan to. I never planned to, but somehow when I stepped off the train and looked up, I was already there. I stood outside the building in the low morning fog, trying to decide whether to kill time or go in early. But the door was already open. It never had been before. That bothered me more than I admitted at the time. Dr. Marcel's office was darker than usual. Not in mood, in light. 2 lamps that had been on in every session were off now. The overhead glow had been dimmed. It felt like being underwater, calm, quiet, and heavy. He nodded when I entered. No small talk, no, "How are you today?" Just, "Tell me about the distortions." He didn't say if, just assumed. I sat down, slower than usual. My legs felt hollow. I set my coat beside me on the couch and looked up. I was watching a woman on the subway yesterday, reading a paperback. And? Her page never turned. Marcel raised an eyebrow. I continued. I watched her for 10 minutes. She held the book open, middle pages, but her eyes never moved. Not once. Not left to right, not down, not a blink. She just held it there, staring dead center like the words were watching her. He didn't respond, so I went on. I tried to follow her off the train, but I blinked and she was gone. I mean gone. There was no one near the platform doors. I even checked the schedule. No one got off at that stop. You're sure? Yes. He leaned back. And how did that make you feel? I scoffed. You're seriously asking that now? It's important. I don't know, I said, like the city is dressing itself in people, like most of what I see is filler. He nodded slowly. That's a common stage. Stage of what? Marcel paused, then said, reacclimation. I stared at him. You keep saying things like I'm coming back to something, like I was somewhere else, that I'm returning. But I've lived one life. I pay bills. I answer emails. I clip my nails. What am I supposedly returning to? His voice was gentle. To coherence. That word stuck to my skin. He stood, moved to the bookshelf behind him. I thought he was going to hand me a book, but instead he pressed a small square section of the wood. A quiet click. A panel slid open, revealing a shelf with only one item. A small circular mirror, old, brass-rimmed, smudged like it had been handled too much. He carried it to me carefully and set it on the coffee table between us. Pick it up, he said. I didn't want to. Something about it felt watched, not in the way mirrors reflect, in the way wells echo. But I reached out. The metal was warm. He said, describe what you see. My reflection. Is it yours? I looked closer. Same face, same eyes. A little more tired, but something was off. My mouth didn't move when I opened it. I dropped the mirror. It didn't shatter. Just spun twice on the wood, then settled face up, and now it looked normal again. Sometimes, Marcel said calmly, we leave behind fragments. What the hell is this? A primer. For what? He sat back down. To teach you which parts of yourself don't belong to you. I left that session in a daze. The city was too bright again. People moved like video frames dropped and resynced. I passed 3 cafes with the same name. A man on a bench reading a newspaper that had tomorrow's date on it. My phone glitched. No bars, no Wi-Fi, no history in the call log except one entry, Marcel, 0000. I hadn't called him, I hadn't received a call, and the time read 0 seconds, but the timestamp was correct. 10 minutes before I arrived at his office. I stared at the screen until it dimmed itself. Then I walked until I couldn't feel my feet. That night I dreamed of my old apartment, not the one I live in now, the first one years ago. The walls were too close together. The floor slanted toward the center. There were no doors. In the dream, I wasn't alone. There was a shape in the corner, low to the ground, breathing slowly with a click between each inhale. I didn't look at it. I couldn't. My neck wouldn't turn. But I knew it was watching me, and in the dream I said out loud, "You're not real." And it replied, "Neither are you." I woke up with dried blood under my fingernails. I had scratched something in my sleep, a symbol, a spiral, again, but this time it was on my own forearm. I didn't go to work that day. I told myself it was a personal day, that I needed the mental break, but really I was afraid to be seen, not by coworkers, not by strangers, just seen, because the mark on my arm was still there, the spiral. It wasn't deep, just below the surface, raised slightly, like a welt, not drawn, not inked, just present. My skin hadn't bled, it had rearranged, as if I'd grown the shape instead of carved it. I wore long sleeves and watched myself in the mirror for 10 minutes before leaving the apartment, just to make sure the rest of me still looked human. But the truth was I wasn't sure. Marcel didn't ask questions when I walked in. He didn't gesture to the couch. He simply stood by the window, curtains closed, as always, and said, "Which part of you are you most afraid of losing?" I didn't answer. He turned slowly, eyes on mine, and repeated, "Which part of you are you most afraid of losing?" And I said before I could think about it, "My doubt." He nodded like I'd passed a test. "That's good. Doubt is one of the last things to go." He moved to his chair, slow and deliberate, and motioned to the table between us. There was a file folder there. I hadn't noticed it before. Marcel opened it carefully. Inside, 3 printed pages. He slid one across to me. "What is this?" I asked. "A transcript," he said, "from your intake session. I never signed a release." "You didn't need to." I scanned it. The words were mine. I recognized the phrasing, the rhythm, but it was wrong. I had no memory of saying any of it. "I talked about a cave," I whispered. Marcel nodded. "Describe it now." I looked up. "Number, I don't remember it." "You do?" "I don't." "You do." Something about the way he said it hit the back of my skull like static. I tried to push the paper away, but he caught my wrist. Not roughly, just firmly. His skin was cool, dry. The touch lasted one breath longer than was comfortable. He let go. The room felt warmer. "Tell me what you've noticed," he said. "You mean the mark?" I pulled up my sleeve. He didn't even glance at it. "That's just residue," he said. "From what?" "From contact." "With what?" "Self-recognition." I leaned back. "I'm done with riddles." "They're not riddles, Rick. You just haven't caught up yet." He stood and crossed to the bookshelf again. This time he retrieved a book. Not old, not ancient, but strange. No title. Just a fabric cover with a texture like dried clay. He opened it to a specific page and held it toward me. There was a drawing, etched in fine lines. A figure seated, legs folded, palms up. Its body was human but wrong. No navel. Arms slightly too long, a subtle ridge down the center of its chest, as if something had once been sealed there. Around it spirals, radiating outward, not just drawn, but carved into the page. When I ran my finger over them, they caught my skin like braille. Below it, one line of text, "Return requires erosion." "What does that mean?" I asked. He closed the book. "Your resistance is softening, that's all it means." I stood. "I think I need to stop coming here." "You can, but you don't want me to." "No," he said calmly, "but you can. That's your right." He didn't follow me to the door, didn't offer a next appointment. He just sat, hands folded again, and said as I turned the handle, "But the sessions won't stop, whether you're here or not." Outside, the sky felt closer than usual. The clouds were low, thick, without color. Cars passed, but made no sound. I checked my phone. No signal, no time, just a blank screen with one notification: "Session continues." That night I tried to sleep early. I unplugged everything, closed the blinds, turned off the clock. Just quiet. But I couldn't. The hum had returned, louder now. Less like a tone and more like a structure, like scaffolding inside my skull. Every few minutes it would shift, slightly, like gears adjusting, like something beneath the surface realigning. I went to the bathroom and stared at my face for the first time in days. Something had changed. Not visibly, not obviously, but I could tell. My eyes looked more reptilian, not in color, not in shape, just in how they waited. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 days. Not from fear, at least not the kind you can name. It was more like I didn't trust the world outside to hold its shape, like if I stepped into it I might fall through it. So I stayed inside, blinds drawn, lights off, laptop on. At first I tried to distract myself. News, movies, a game I hadn't played in months, but none of it held. The internet felt hollow, like I was reading echoes instead of headlines, like the content was being scraped from somewhere else, just close enough to feel familiar but wrong enough to be unsettling. That's when I started looking through old photos. Not on my phone, those felt contaminated somehow. No, I pulled out an actual photo album from the bookshelf, the kind no one makes anymore. Leather cover, plastic sleeves, a Christmas gift from years ago. I flipped through it slowly. Birthdays, vacations, apartment moves. My face changed. My hairline retreated. But something else caught my eye. There were fewer people in each photo than I remembered. A dinner with friends, I remember 5 of us. The photo showed 4. A hiking trip, I was sure my ex was with me. She's not in the frame, not even in the background, just trees and shadow. I flipped to the last page, empty, no photos, just a faint indentation, a spiral, pressed into the cardboard like something had burned it there without heat. I closed the album, and my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no caller ID, no contact history. The message read, "He sees what you're hiding. Come to 14th and Westwood at 11 p.m. Bring nothing, don't speak." I stared at it for a long time, then reread it 3 times. Something in me knew it was real. And worse, knew it wasn't the first time I'd been contacted. Just the first time I remembered. I didn't bring my phone, didn't bring my wallet, just walked. 14th and Westwood was a dead intersection, half lit by a crooked street lamp and surrounded by empty storefronts, the kind of place where memories get misplaced. I stood under the light and waited. At 11:06, a figure stepped out of the alley, hooded, pale hands, no words. They handed me a slip of paper and stepped backward into the dark. I didn't follow, didn't need to, and I unfolded the paper. "You're not the first. Marcel's been at this for years, always one at a time, always the same symbols, always the same fracture." Beneath that, a sketch. Crude, rushed, but familiar. My spiral. The one I woke up with, the one I'd drawn in the notebook, the one in the ad, the one on my arm. Only now it was labeled Identity Vector, Stage 2. On the back, a name, T. Ward, and a number, local. I didn't call right away. I waited until morning when the world felt slightly more real, when coffee smelled like coffee again, when the mirror reflected what I expected. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times. Then a voice, thin, dry, male. "Who gave you this?" "Someone at 14th and Westwood." A pause. Then, "Describe the spiral." So I did, slowly, precisely. He sighed. "Okay, I believe you." "Who are you?" I asked. "Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You need to leave Marcel before session 7. "Why?" "Because that's when it takes." "What takes?" He lowered his voice. "The shift, the core transfer. He doesn't just ask questions, he extracts orientation. Memory, sure. Emotion, maybe. But mostly, identity." "That's not possible." "You already feel it, don't you?" he asked. And I did. I was beginning to forget things I once held tight. How my parents smelled, the cadence of my ex's laugh, my old apartment layout, where I was on New Year's Eve 3 years ago. It wasn't slipping, it was being unthreaded. "I can help," the voice said, "but you need to come alone, and you can't tell him you spoke to me. If he finds out..." Silence. "He'll end the session early." That night I sat by the mirror again. I stared at my own reflection. And for just a moment, not more than a second, I saw the same thing I'd seen in the mirror in Marcel's office. My mouth didn't move when I whispered, "Who am I?" But the reflection did. It smiled. And it whispered something else. I didn't plan on going back. That was the decision when I woke up. I was done. No more spiral drawings. No more warm mirrors. No more cryptic questions that seemed to already know the answers. I made coffee, twice as strong. I opened the window for the first time in days. I looked at the mark on my arm and told myself it didn't mean anything. Just a scratch. A coincidence. A shape the mind fills in with pattern recognition. But somewhere between 9:13 a.m. and 9:18 a.m., I blacked out again. I didn't feel dizzy. I didn't fall. I didn't move. One moment I was drinking coffee. The next I was sitting in Dr. Marcel's office. No memory of how I got there. No coat, no phone, no notebook. And just me sitting on the couch and him, already seated, waiting. As if this was planned. As if I had never intended not to come. "Session 7, he said softly. "You made it. I didn't want to." "I know." "Then how?" "You agreed, a long time ago, before you forgot." I stared at him. My throat was dry. "That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to," he said. "It just has to hold." He handed me a folded sheet of paper, my handwriting. I opened it. "If I try to back out, bring me in. I'll resist, but it means it's working." Don't let me leave. Not before 7. There was a signature beneath it. Mine. I stared at it for a long time, not because I doubted the writing, but because I remembered the moment I wrote it, sort of. A memory flashed, dim, fractured, a table, a small pen, Marcel's eyes watching me, not compelling, not threatening, just there. You said the same thing last time, he said. Last time? He nodded. How many times have we done this? Only once for you, but for me, many. I felt my jaw tighten. What happens in session 7? Marcel leaned forward finally for the first time, and he whispered, you realign. He asked me to describe my mother. I opened my mouth and couldn't. Her face came to me, but not her voice. Her scent, her hands. Nothing tactile, just a visual placeholder, a yearbook photo in my head. He asked me my childhood address. I gave the right number, but the wrong street. He asked me the name of my first pet. I said Kip. I've never had a pet. My mouth was answering faster than my memory. He smiled gently. See? I'm not doing this on purpose, I snapped. No, he said. You're doing it on schedule. He placed a small object on the table, not the mirror. A stone, oblong, smooth, gray-blue. It hummed, quietly, not audibly, but inside my chest cavity. What is that? A map, he said. To what? To yourself. He gestured for me to touch it. I hesitated. Then I reached forward, pressing 2 fingers against the stone's cool surface. And immediately, my name changed, not outwardly, not vocally, but internally. Something slid. I felt a different name settle into the space behind my teeth. Not a word, a tone, a shape I could hum but not say. I pulled my hand back. The sensation lingered. What did you do to me? I didn't do anything, he said. You allowed the memory to return. You gave consent before the forgetting. That's not real. It is real. You just weren't ready to hear it in language, so we gave it back to you in resonance. I stood up. I didn't know if I was going to hit him or run or scream, but I stood, and Marcel stood too. You're disoriented, he said calmly. You think? You're between, still anchored but adrift. He took a step closer, not aggressive, measured, intentional. The spiral is only the beginning. The memory isn't just yours. It's structural. It's woven into how your cells divide, how you perceive movement, how you tolerate light. I never agreed to this, I whispered. He didn't blink. You asked for this. You asked to forget, and you asked to come back. I don't remember. That's the point, he said. I don't remember leaving the session, again, just like the first time. I blinked, and I was in my apartment. The stone was in my coat pocket, it's still warm. And when I looked in the mirror that night, my reflection looked sad, like it had just told a lie it had told too many times before. It blinked out of sync with me, just once, then smiled. The stone won't stop humming, not loudly, but constantly. A low vibration, just beneath perception, like a second heartbeat. It doesn't pulse like electronics, it resonates. When I press it to the wall, it goes quiet. When I hold it, it grows warm. I can't explain it, but I can feel it sinking to something inside me, like it's waiting for a signal. I tried to throw it away this morning. I wrapped it in a plastic bag, dropped it down a sewer grate half a block away. When I got home, it was back in my pocket, still warm. The notebook is full again, and I don't remember writing half of it. There are pages torn out, sentences scrawled sideways into the margins. Stop trusting mirrors. Your name is not sequential. Do not let him ask you about your dreams. You are not the first version. I don't know who wrote those lines, but they're in my handwriting, and the spiral's getting clearer, tighter, more symmetrical. The first ones were messy. Now they're sharp, engineered, like blueprints for something I haven't built yet. The phone rang again last night. Same number, same voice. I saw the file, he said. And which file? Yours, from his cabinet. What did it say? You've already gone through this 8 times. I didn't speak. He continued. Session 8 is where the anchor point detaches. After that, there's no going back, no rethreading. You either continue through the breach or disappear into it. What if I stop? You won't. You're too far in. But if you want to make a different choice this time, if you want out, you have to give something up. What? The spiral, the original vector. That's not possible, I said. It's part of me now. No, he said quietly. It's in you. That's not the same. He gave me a meeting point, the basement of an old post office, long decommissioned, just outside the city grid. "Come alone," he said, "if you're serious. If not, you'll be back for session 8, whether you mean to or not." I almost went. I made it as far as the platform, but something stopped me. Not fear, something more like recognition. Not of the voice, of Marcel's calm, of the look in his eyes. The look of someone who already knows how you'll answer. Not because he's manipulating you, but because you've already agreed. I took the train 2 stops past the meeting point. I walked for an hour. No plan, no direction. Every few blocks I'd see something that didn't belong. A second sun reflected in a window. A pigeon frozen mid-hop. A fire alarm blinking, a pattern I'd seen in a dream. Short, short, long, long, short. The pattern of the spiral. The world was already bending, and something in me was bending with it. That night I slept without dreaming. But when I woke, my pillow was wet with ink. Black spiral drawn perfectly beneath my head. It hadn't bled from a pen. It had bled from me. The elevator to Marcel's floor was out of service. There was no sign on the door, no cones, no maintenance tape. Just the button refusing to light when I pressed it. I stood there for a full minute watching my own reflection in the brushed metal, noticing how it lagged, how it didn't quite blink when I did. I took the stairs, 3 flights up, but it felt longer. The air thickened between landings. My ears popped. A single fly buzzed around the emergency light above the last landing, spiraling in a way that made me stop and watch. Its wings moved too slowly, like it was flying through syrup. Marcel's door was already open. Again. Inside, the office was unlit, no lamps, no overhead, only a single blue glow coming from the far corner under the bookshelves. The couch was gone, so was the table, so was the mirror. In their place, a single chair, metal, cold, facing a wall with no features. Marcel stood behind it. "Sit," he said. I didn't move. "There's no session 8, is there?" I said. "No," he replied. "Then what is this?" He tilted his head slightly, the way he always did when I said something obvious. "This is the breach point." "The what?" "The threshold between identification and occupancy." He stepped closer. "You've been operating under the assumption that you are remembering something." I nodded slowly. "You're not," he said. "You're being built." I don't remember sitting down, but I was in the chair, and Marcel was behind me now, hands on the back of the chair, not touching me but close. The stone was in my lap. It pulsed with a dull warmth. "Rick Brenton," he said softly, like a teacher reciting the first line of a hymn. "Do you remember choosing the name?" I swallowed. "I didn't." "You did, but not in this version." He began to circle me slowly. "The spiral is not a symbol, it's a tool, a scaffold. You've been drawing it not because you remember it, but because your subconscious is using it to build orientation, to prepare your mind for arrival." "Arrival of what?" I asked. "Of you." I stared at him. "I'm already here." He shook his head. "You're a proxy, a holder. The original is still in transfer. What you've called memory is just the formatting phase. You're almost ready for handover." I stood up. The chair groaned. "Number, that's not true." "It is. You felt it. The inconsistencies, the resets, the shifts. The loss of memory isn't failure. It's intentional. It's calibration." He stepped closer. "When the breach opens, the original self completes the journey. And this," he gestured to me, "this shell becomes occupied." "By what?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "By you." I backed away. The wall behind me felt too close, too warm. I was sweating. "Then what happens to me?" I asked. "The scaffolding dissolves, the pattern completes, the spiral collapses inward. I don't want that." "You did," he said. "Before the transfer, before you split yourself to survive the breach." "I don't remember that." "You weren't meant to. That was the point of the therapy, to prepare you for your own return." I closed my eyes, tried to breathe. The hum was back, louder now, a low, constant frequency like tectonic plates scraping against each other. The floor felt like it was vibrating. The walls began to curve. Not visibly, not outwardly, but perceptually, as if space itself had forgotten how to stay straight. I opened my eyes, and Marcel was holding the mirror, only now it was no longer brass. It was made of the same material as the stone, black. Perfectly round, reflecting nothing, he offered it to me. "One last chance," he said. "Look, remember, decide." I didn't take it, and instead I turned and ran down the hallway. past the stairwell, down the steps, skipping every third one, out into the street, gasping. But the city wasn't right. The buildings shimmered. Windows reflected scenes that didn't match the interiors. People walked in loops. A child chased a balloon that never touched the ground. And all the while, the hum pulsed behind my ribs, growing and centering, calling me home. I didn't sleep the night before. I didn't eat. I sat in my apartment staring at the stone. It lay on the kitchen counter like a dropped tooth, humming louder now, no longer a vibration, but a presence, like a second consciousness resting just beside mine. I knew what was waiting, and I knew I had to go back, not because I wanted to, because the spiral wouldn't let me go. It was in the walls now, in the dust on the floor, in the way the faucet dripped in rhythm, in the patterns the lights made behind my closed eyelids. I couldn't see anything else. The spiral wasn't something I'd drawn. It was something I'd always been walking into. The office building didn't look the same. The tailor shop downstairs was gone. So was the bookstore. The front door now opened without me touching it. The stairwell lights flickered in a different sequence. When I reached the third floor, the hallway was longer, or I was smaller. The ceiling arched. The paint on the walls peeled in fractal shapes. The door to Marcel's office was open, but now it pulsed faintly, like a lung inhaling breath. I stepped through. The office was gone. In its place was the breach. A chamber, circular, no furniture, no shelves, no light sources. But everything glowed faintly with the same soft blue as the dream. The spiral was carved into the floor, perfectly symmetrical now, etched with impossible precision. At the center stood Marcel, but he looked different, not in body, in presence, larger somehow or more complete. His eyes were deeper, not just green, but endless, reflective in a way that made me feel like I was being seen in layers. "You made it," he said. "I didn't have a choice," I whispered. "Of course you did," he said, "but you made it anyway. That's what matters." He stepped aside. Behind him, a shape began to form. It rose from the floor, tall, narrow, indistinct. At first it looked like smoke, then light, then bone, then me. Not an exact duplicate, but close. A suggestion of me, how I might look if I had never forgotten. Eyes like the spiral, skin like the stone, still, patient, watching me arrive. "The real you," Marcel said. "No," I said, backing away. This is a trick." He nodded. "It is, but not a lie." I looked at the figure. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood, radiating familiarity like heat. "I don't want to be it," I said. "You already are," Marcel said, "but you haven't been aligned." That's what the therapy was. Not healing, synchronization. "What happens if I say no?" Marcel stepped closer. "Then the structure collapses. You dissolve. You remain, but only as noise, echoes, a spiral without a center." I looked at the figure again. It smiled, and in its voice, not spoken but felt, I heard, "Welcome home." I fell to my knees. I didn't cry. I just stopped. Stopped resisting, stopped questioning, stopped pretending that I understood what was real and what was not. Marcel knelt beside me. "Final question," he said. I looked at him. "Who are you?" he asked, and I whispered, voice cracked, breath shallow, "I am the patient." He nodded and said, "Then you're ready." The room collapsed inward, and not physically, conceptually. The spiral folded into itself, each coil a memory, a face, a version of me I had lived and abandoned. The dream self, the worker self, the child self, the observer, the angry one, the skeptic, the man who wanted out. They folded down into silence, and the breach opened. I stepped through. I don't remember what came after, only that when I opened my eyes again, the world was quiet. Not silent, not still, just tuned. People moved the way they should. Birds flew where birds belonged. Coffee tasted like coffee. And my reflection no longer resisted. It moved when I moved, smiled when I smiled. And behind the eyes there was depth. Not the old me, not the human scaffold. Something older, something returned. Marcel's office no longer exists. I've checked. The building's condemned. No records, no mail slot, no neighbors who remember it ever being there. But the mirror remains. In my closet, wrapped in cloth, warm, even in the dark. Sometimes I take it out, not to check who I am, but to see who might be coming next. It's been 6 weeks since session 10, or That's what the calendar says. Time feels different now. Not faster, not slower, just less linear. Events arrive like weather patterns. I don't measure days by sunrises anymore. I measure them by returnings. When the spiral comes back into focus, I know a new cycle has begun. I still live in the apartment. Technically, my name is still on the lease. The mail still arrives, but it doesn't feel like mine. It feels like a museum of the man who walked in here a year ago and thought therapy was something you schedule between emails. That version of me, Rick Brenton, rational adult, tired professional, weekend loner, he still lingers at the edges of things. A ghost, not mourned, not buried, just set aside. I haven't decided if that's sad. He was trying, that man, trying to hold it all together, trying to keep himself in one piece while the pieces changed shape. But what do you do when the framework itself was never yours to begin with? What do you do when your memories turn out to be scaffolding built around a void? I still see Marcel. Not in sessions, not in offices, not even in dreams, but in alignment. In moments when things click into place just a little too perfectly. A word overheard in a cafe that finishes a thought I didn't say aloud. A stranger's face blinking out of sync with time. A puddle on the street reflecting not what's above it, but what's beneath me. Those are the moments I know he's still watching, or not watching, waiting. There are no more formal meetings, no more spiral drawings, no more humming stones. I am the hum now. I carry the frequency in my spine. When I walk through crowds, I feel people shiver slightly, not in fear, in disruption, like their cells recognize something they can't name, like a dream they forgot calling out to them from across the waking day. I've started cataloging others like me. Not officially, just softly. The ones who never quite rethreaded after a trauma. The ones who see echoes where there should be shadows. The ones who blink twice before looking in mirrors. They're everywhere. Some of them know, most don't. Some are mid-session, though they've never heard Marcel's name. The therapy isn't always an office. Sometimes it's a place, a stranger, a sentence you hear in a bookstore and never forget. Sometimes the therapy is the forgetting itself. The spiral finds its way in, and when it does, the breach begins to whisper. The breach is quiet now. For me, at least, it doesn't call. It doesn't pull. It just waits, curled in the back of my perception like a thought I might have had in a previous version of this body. I suspect there will be another return, not a reset. Those aren't needed anymore. The scaffolding held. The orientation is complete. But something beyond Marcel waits in the deeper spiral. Something colder. Older, not unkind, but non-concerned. I think about that sometimes. How much of what we called therapy was actually preparation for replacement? How many of us are still just training to become what's waiting to arrive? Marcel never lied, but he also never told the truth all at once. That's not how his kind speaks. They reveal in layers, in pressure, in intervals. And only to those who have stopped needing permission to change. Sometimes I walk by his old building. It's boarded up now, graffitied, half collapsed. The staircase is gone. The second floor burned. But every time I stand there long enough, someone joins me. Not always the same person, never for long. We don't speak, we just recognize each other, and then we move on. Like notes in the same chord, playing for different ears, the world keeps moving, rain falls, traffic groans, people argue about rent and politics and sandwiches, children laugh, dogs bark, systems run. Everything looks the same, but it isn't. There's structure beneath it now, not imposed, revealed. And those of us who have crossed back through the breach, we don't try to fix the world, we just hold it steady while it remembers what it is, while it begins its own spiral. Because everything is spiraling, memory, identity, purpose. And the only question left is, will you spin toward center, or will you spiral outward, until you forget you were ever a shape at all? I remember, and I'll keep remembering, for all the versions of me that never made it back, and for the ones still waiting, in rooms without clocks, on couches that creak too loud, under the weight of a name they never chose. It's strange how memory loses its texture once you stop needing it. I remember being Rick Brenton, though the name no longer fits. It feels like an inherited coat, worn at weddings and funerals out of respect. The seams are intact, but it no longer smells like me. I still live in the world, though I'm not sure you could call it living. I occupy space, a different kind now, fluid, distributed, liminal. My presence has gone quiet. Soft enough not to echo, but firm enough to leave impressions. I move more through attention than through motion. Where I look, I am. Where I am, something adjusts. The world adapts, subtly, like a breath you weren't aware you'd been holding. Years passed after the breach, or so I assumed. The sun rose, governments argued, and people fell in and out of love, in and out of patterns. But something had shifted beneath the veneer, not globally, not cataclysmically, structurally, like tectonic plates aligning. I started noticing old buildings where there hadn't been any, people forgetting entire stores that had existed the day before, street names changing in ways that left no bureaucratic trace. New constellations appeared in the sky, though no one seemed to be tracking them, and those of us who had crossed, who had spiraled back into ourselves, we could feel it. The world had accepted infiltration by therapy. It had become, in essence, a planetary session, a species-wide breach event. I watched the others change too. We stopped aging, at least in the usual sense. Our bodies continued, yes, but our presence flattened. Time stopped accumulating inside us. We began to relate to the present as a texture, not a timeline. Some retreated into remote places, high altitudes, deep-sea colonies, orbital habitats no longer on any registry. Some became educators, architects, linguists, embedding spiral principles into language and law. Some disappeared completely, becoming whispers in crowded rooms, ripples and moments of déjà vu. And me? I stayed here, wherever here is. I no longer speak to Marcel, but I dream in his voice. He no longer resembles the reptilian shape he first wore for me. That was just his mask of comprehension, a face I could handle. Now, when he visits in fragments of dream, he is a geometry, a sequence of corners, shifting and tilting with the rhythm of insight. When I ask him what I am now, he says nothing. He only turns slowly and folds inward, and somehow I understand. There was a night recently, if you could call it that, when I found myself in a city I had never known. Tall glass buildings, still air, no stars. I was not walking. I was gliding, though my feet made sound. On the corner of a street with no name, I saw a storefront. Behind the glass, in soft yellow light, was a single couch, and beside it a tall figure, scaly, patient, familiar. It was me, or perhaps the version that came after me. And sitting across from him was someone new, someone still afraid, still cracked, still beginning. He was speaking softly, his hands trembling, and the figure, the version of me who had learned how to watch without needing to guide, just nodded. He said nothing. He let the spiral do the talking. And that's the truth of it, isn't it? The spiral isn't a map. It's a lens, a curve through which all consciousness must pass. And when it bends you long enough, you stop asking why. You begin asking how far. They say the spiral has an endpoint, a center. I used to believe that. Now I know the truth. The spiral doesn't end. It only deepens. And somewhere deep within it, I am still arriving. Over and over, wearing new faces, asking new questions, whispering to the broken, the sleepless, the misaligned, sit down. We've already begun. Now tell me what you remember before it's too late to forget.